Michael Jackson's Off the Wall, the genesis of a musical revolution. Before the iconic moonwalk became a cultural phenomenon, before Thriller shattered every conceivable sales record and redefined the music industry forever, Michael Jackson was a 21-year-old artist standing at the precipice of artistic transformation. The year was 1979, and Off the Wall was about to emerge as his explosive rebirth. Not merely as an album, but as a revolutionary statement that would fundamentally alter the landscape of popular music. This wasn't just another collection of songs from a former child star. It was a bold declaration of independence, a line drawn in the sand that separated Michael Jackson, the product, from Michael Jackson, the artist. For the first time in his professional life, Michael was truly free. No longer confined to the cherubic image of the Jackson 5's lead vocalist, no longer constrained by the rigid corporate machinery of Motown Records, he was finally positioned to present himself to the world on his own terms, with his own sound, his own vision, and his own creative fingerprint. The irony, however, lies in what happened next. Despite selling over 20 million copies worldwide and fundamentally reinventing what pop music could be, Michael harbored deep resentment about how the album was received by the industry establishment. This wasn't merely professional disappointment, it was a profound personal wound that would shape his artistic trajectory for the remainder of his career. To understand the seismic impact of Off the Wall, one must first appreciate the suffocating environment from which Michael Jackson sought to escape. His entire existence had been performance, beginning almost before he could properly walk. As the magnetic frontman of the Jackson 5, he had spent his formative years under the omnipresent control of Motown Records, where Berry Gordy's hit factory operated with military precision and corporate efficiency. Every song was chosen for him. Every interview was scripted. Every public appearance was choreographed down to the smallest gesture. Michael was undoubtedly a star, but he was not an artist in any meaningful sense of the word. Behind the glittering facade of success, Michael's frustration was mounting with each passing year. As the Jackson 5 matured and evolved into the Jacksons, Michael's creative hunger grew increasingly insatiable. He was writing songs in his spare time, experimenting with different sounds and musical concepts, dreaming of the day when he could exercise genuine creative control over his artistic output. But Motown remained steadfastly uninterested in his creative aspirations. The label had built a lucrative empire around a proven formula, and they saw no compelling reason to allow their most valuable asset to deviate from the established template that had generated millions in revenue. By the mid-1970s, the collective frustration of the Jackson brothers had reached a breaking point. The decision to leave Motown in 1975 and sign with Epic Records represented far more than a simple change of corporate affiliation. It was a jailbreak of monumental proportions. For Michael, who was just 17 years old at the time, this transition offered his first genuine glimpse of true artistic autonomy. The possibility of creative control, which had seemed like an impossible dream under Motown's rigid system, suddenly felt within reach. However, breaking free from Motown was merely the first step in a much longer journey toward artistic independence. Michael harbored ambitious creative visions, but he still needed the right collaborator. Someone who could help him unlock a sound that the world had never heard before. Someone who would treat him as a creative equal rather than a commercial commodity. As fate would have it, that perfect partnership was about to materialize in the most unexpected of circumstances. The year 1978 proved to be pivotal when Michael was cast as the Scarecrow in The Wiz, a big-budget film adaptation of The Wizard of Oz featuring an all-black cast. While the movie itself proved to be a commercial disappointment at the box office, something far more significant was happening behind the scenes. Michael encountered Quincy Jones, the film's musical director, and this meeting would fundamentally alter the trajectory of both men's careers. Quincy Jones was no ordinary producer. He was a Renaissance man of American music, a jazz virtuoso, composer, arranger, and sonic architect, whose resume included collaborations with legends ranging from Frank Sinatra to Ray Charles. His musical sophistication was matched by his technical expertise and his ability to blend diverse genres into cohesive, commercially viable works of art. Michael was immediately drawn to Quincy's vast knowledge, impeccable taste, and professional demeanor. More importantly, there was an instant mutual respect between the two men, accompanied by an indefinable creative spark that suggested the possibility of something truly special. Michael had been searching for someone who would allow him to grow as an artist. Someone who would treat him as a creative peer rather than a manufactured product to be marketed and sold. Quincy, for his part, recognized Michael's burning ambition and innate talent, understanding that he was working with someone truly exceptional. When Michael approached Quincy about producing his next album, the response from Epic Records was less than enthusiastic. Quincy was perceived as too jazzy, too sophisticated, too old school for a young pop star who needed to appeal to mainstream radio and young audiences. But Michael was adamant about his choice. He wanted to work with someone who could help him craft a sound that transcended the boundaries of pop music. Something genre-defying, boundary-breaking, and ultimately timeless. It represented a significant risk for all parties involved. But this unlikely partnership between a 21-year-old soul pop star and a seasoned jazz producer would soon prove that sometimes the most improbable collaborations yield the most extraordinary results. Once Quincy and Michael joined forces, the recording studio was transformed into a laboratory of musical innovation, with Michael assuming the role of a mad scientist of sound. The sessions for Off the Wall took place primarily at Westlake Recording Studios and Alan Zen's recording in Los Angeles, but these were far from ordinary recording sessions. For the first time in his career, Michael was stepping fully into the roles of producer, arranger, and creative director, taking responsibility for every aspect of the album's sonic landscape. Quincy assembled an extraordinary team of musicians for the project, including Greg Phillinganes on keyboards, Louis Johnson on bass, and the legendary songwriter Rod Temperton, who had already made his mark with hits like Boogie Nights and would later contribute the title track to Thriller. The collective talent present in that studio was nothing short of remarkable, creating an environment where musical magic could happen organically. Michael's approach to the recording process was characterized by meticulous attention to detail and an almost obsessive pursuit of perfection. He didn't simply sing the songs, he studied every aspect of the recording process, layered harmonies with laser precision, beatboxed rhythms to communicate his vision to the musicians, and perfected every single note until it felt exactly right. This hands-on approach represented a dramatic departure from his previous experiences, where his role had been largely limited to vocal performance. The creation of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough marked a particular turning point in Michael's artistic development. He insisted on writing and producing the track entirely himself, marking the first time in his career that he had exercised total creative control over a song from initial conception to final completion. The resulting track was a revelation, a fresh, unstoppable fusion of disco, funk, jazz, and pop that had never been heard before. The groove was absolutely undeniable. The sound was simultaneously tight and explosive, and it represented Michael without any creative constraints whatsoever. This was the sound of artistic freedom, and it was intoxicating. When the album was finally completed, even the typically reserved executives at Epic Records were stunned by what they heard. They had expected a good album, certainly, but nobody could have predicted the seismic cultural impact that was about to unfold. Off the Wall was released in August 1979, and its impact was immediate and overwhelming. Rather than simply landing in the marketplace, it exploded with the force of a cultural bomb. The lead single, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, became an instant phenomenon with its infectious horn stabs, hypnotic groove, and Michael's unforgettable falsetto vocals. The song climbed all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, but more importantly, it introduced a completely new sound to mainstream audiences, funkier, sharper, and infinitely cooler than anything currently dominating radio playlists. The success continued with Rock With You, a track that was smoother than silk and absolutely dripping with soul. It became another chart-topping anthem that demonstrated Michael's ability to craft songs that were both commercially appealing and artistically sophisticated. The album's third major single, She's Out of My Life, revealed an entirely different dimension of Michael's artistry, a raw, emotionally devastating ballad that showcased a more vulnerable side of his personality. Finally, the title track, Off the Wall, served as a reminder that this young artist could command both the dance floor and the airwaves with equal effectiveness. In total, the album produced 4 top 10 hits, an achievement that no black solo artist had ever accomplished before in the history of popular music. Critics universally praised Michael's newfound artistic maturity, his extraordinary vocal control, and his willingness to take creative risks. He had evolved from teen sensation to full-blown superstar almost overnight, and the commercial numbers supported this transformation completely. More than 20 million copies were sold globally, multiple platinum certifications were achieved, and Michael won a Grammy Award for Best R&B Male Vocal Performance. However, there was a significant problem lurking beneath all this success, one that would have profound implications for Michael's future artistic development. That single Grammy Award was the only recognition he received from the music industry's most prestigious institution, and for someone who had poured his soul into creating something genuinely revolutionary, this limited acknowledgement felt like a devastating gut punch. Despite the massive commercial success and critical acclaim that Off the Wall had generated, The Grammy Awards treated it like just another album among many. Michael had invested everything he had into this project. His creative energy, his artistic vision, his dreams of independence and recognition. He had broken significant barriers, redefined what pop music could be, and delivered one of the most innovative and influential records of the entire decade. His ambitions extended far beyond simple commercial success. He was aiming to make history, to create something that would stand the test of time and be remembered as a pivotal moment in popular music. When the Grammy nominations were announced, the recognition was shockingly minimal. Michael won only a single award: Best R&B Male Vocal Performance for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. There were no nominations for Album of the Year, Record of the Year, or any of the major pop categories that would have signified genuine industry respect and acknowledgement of the album's groundbreaking nature. The music industry establishment had applauded politely and then promptly looked the other way, treating Off the Wall as a successful but ultimately peripheral achievement. Michael was absolutely furious about this snub, though he maintained his characteristic public composure and smiled through the disappointment. Privately, however, the slight hit him with tremendous force. He interpreted the Grammy oversight as a clear message from the industry establishment. No matter how brilliant his music might be, he still wasn't being taken seriously as an artist, as a creative force, or as a solo black performer attempting to redefine mainstream pop music. This wasn't merely professional disappointment, it was a form of motivation that would wow his ambitions for years to come. Michael channeled that snub and transformed it into an intense creative fire. He began planning his next move with the understanding that it wouldn't be just another album. It would be a cultural earthquake that would be impossible for anyone to ignore. While Thriller was still in the developmental stages, the world was beginning to realize that Michael Jackson had fundamentally changed the sound and scope of popular music, even if most people didn't fully comprehend the magnitude of that transformation yet. Off the Wall represented far more than just a hit album. It was a genuine turning point in the evolution of popular music. Before its release, the musical landscape was still largely dominated by rock music. Disco was in its death throes, and the industry was collectively uncertain about where to go next. But Michael Jackson, working in close collaboration with Quincy Jones, forged an entirely new path forward. Rather than following existing trends, they invented completely new ones that would influence artists for decades to come. The sound of Off the Wall was nothing short of revolutionary. It seamlessly blended funk's raw grit with disco's shimmering polish, soul's emotional depth with pop's broad accessibility. Michael's vocal performances didn't simply sing the songs. They danced, snapped, whispered, and soared with an emotional range and technical precision that had rarely been heard in popular music. Tracks like Get on the Floor and Working Day and Night brought complex rhythmic structures into the mainstream consciousness, while I Can't Help It gave listeners a sophisticated taste of smooth jazz-influenced elegance that elevated the entire album's artistic credibility. The cultural significance of Off the Wall extended far beyond its immediate commercial success. Suddenly, the concept of a black solo artist dominating pop radio didn't seem like an impossible dream, it had become a demonstrated reality. The album established a template that would influence countless artists, paving the way for performers like Prince, Madonna, and Janet Jackson to blend genres fearlessly and break established rules about what popular music could be and who was allowed to lead it. It fundamentally redefined both the sound of pop music and the demographics of its leadership. However, even as the hits climbed the charts and the cultural influence continued to spread, Off the Wall contained powerful moments that were hiding in plain sight, away from the commercial spotlight. While everyone remembered Rock With You and Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, the album was much more than its successful singles. It was a richly layered work of art filled with nuance and songs that revealed new depths of meaning and musical sophistication with every listen. Consider I Can't Help It, written by Stevie Wonder and Suzanne Green, a smooth jazz-influenced track that showcased Michael's softer, more intimate vocal style. While it wasn't designed for radio success, it became a favorite among serious music fans and offered a glimpse into Michael's musical curiosity and artistic sophistication. Similarly, Girlfriend, a breezy, Beatles-influenced song penned by Paul McCartney, felt playful and light on the surface, but actually hinted at the complex future relationship between the two superstars, including their eventual collaboration and the business tensions that would emerge years later. Perhaps most significantly, She's Out of My Life represented a moment of raw emotional vulnerability that cut straight to the listener's heart. Michael's voice actually breaks during the final notes, and this wasn't theatrical performance. He reportedly cried during every single take in the studio. The emotion was completely genuine, offering listeners a glimpse of the real human being behind the carefully constructed pop persona that most people thought they knew. Off the Wall wasn't simply a dance record or a collection of radio-friendly pop songs. It was fundamentally a coming-of-age story, reflecting a young man exploring independence, desire, fear, joy, and heartbreak within the span of just 42 minutes. The emotions expressed throughout the album were absolutely real, and the artistry was undeniably sophisticated. Over time, critics began to reevaluate the album's significance, with Rolling Stone eventually ranking it among the greatest albums ever recorded. Countless artists have cited it as a foundational influence on their own creative development. Despite this growing recognition and the album's long-term cultural impact, Michael Jackson never felt that Off the Wall received the recognition it truly deserved, particularly from the industry establishment that claimed to celebrate innovation and artistic achievement. In later interviews, Michael consistently referred to Off the Wall as his favorite album, not because it sold the most copies or generated the most revenue, but because it represented the most authentic expression of his artistic identity. It was pure, honest, and created without external pressure or commercial expectations. It was his first genuine statement as a solo artist, and he firmly believed it should have been recognized as a complete game changer. The Grammy Awards' failure to properly acknowledge the album's significance remained a source of ongoing frustration for Michael. The media's inability to fully understand or appreciate what he had accomplished only compounded his sense of being undervalued. In one particularly revealing interview, he stated that it was totally unfair that Off the Wall didn't receive nominations for Record of the Year or Album of the Year, declaring emphatically that it was the best album of the year. This sting of being overlooked by the establishment remained with Michael throughout his career, hardening his ambition and fueling the perfectionism that would define all of his subsequent artistic endeavors. He came to understand that simply being talented wasn't sufficient for achieving the level of respect and recognition he craved. If he wanted to be genuinely respected by his peers and the industry establishment, if he wanted to permanently change the game rather than just participate in it, he would have to dominate it so completely that ignoring him would become impossible. This realization directly explains why Thriller became such a calculated, relentless, and obsessively scaled project. Michael wasn't simply making music anymore. He was proving a fundamental point about his artistry, his vision, and his rightful place in the hierarchy of popular culture, and that point began with Off the Wall, an album that established not just a new sound but a new version of Michael Jackson himself. The legacy of Off the Wall extends far beyond its immediate commercial success or even its long-term cultural influence. It represents the moment when one of the most important artists in popular music history first discovered his authentic voice and learned to use it with complete creative freedom. Before the moonwalk became a global phenomenon, before the red leather jacket became an iconic fashion statement, and before Thriller shattered every conceivable ceiling in the entertainment industry, there was Off the Wall, the sound of a young genius finally stepping out of the shadows that had defined his entire life. At 21 years old, Michael Jackson was finally unleashed, and he used that freedom to reshape pop, soul, and funk music with fearless ambition and distinctive style. Off the Wall didn't just introduce a new version of Michael Jackson to the world. It introduced an entirely new standard for what pop music could achieve artistically and commercially. While Thriller may have ultimately grabbed the spotlight and dominated public consciousness, Off the Wall built the stage upon which that later triumph would unfold. Michael never forgot how the album was overlooked by the industry establishment, and perhaps that persistent sense of being undervalued is exactly why Off the Wall continues to feel so personal, so raw, and so emotionally honest decades after its release. It was the perfect artistic debut precisely because it wasn't trying to be perfect in a calculated way, it was simply honest, joyful, and ultimately timeless. The album captured a young artist at the exact moment he discovered his true creative voice, and that authenticity resonates with listeners even today. Off the Wall stands as testament to the power of artistic freedom and creative collaboration. It demonstrates what becomes possible when a genuinely talented artist is finally given the space and support needed to explore their full potential. The partnership between Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones created something that neither could have achieved independently, proving that the right creative relationships can produce results that transcend the sum of their individual parts. The album's influence on subsequent generations of artists cannot be overstated. It established a blueprint for genre blending that continues to influence popular music today, proving that commercial success and artistic innovation are not mutually exclusive concepts. Off the Wall showed that popular music could be simultaneously sophisticated and accessible, emotionally complex and immediately appealing, commercially viable and artistically significant. In the final analysis, Off the Wall represents the foundation upon which Michael Jackson's legendary career was built. It was here that he first demonstrated his ability to transcend traditional genre boundaries, here that he first exercised complete creative control, and here that he first experienced both the exhilaration of artistic freedom and the frustration of industry politics. The album's reception taught him valuable lessons about the music business that would inform his approach to every subsequent project, ultimately leading to the calculated perfection of Thriller and the continued evolution of his artistry throughout the 1980s. Off the Wall remains a masterpiece of popular music, a work of art that continues to reveal new layers of meaning and musical sophistication with each listen. It stands as proof that Michael Jackson was not merely an entertainer or performer, but a genuine artist capable of creating music that speaks to fundamental human experiences while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of what popular music could achieve. The album's enduring popularity and continued critical acclaim serve as vindication of Michael's original vision and artistic ambitions, even if that recognition came later than he would have preferred.